Welcome to my little primer on the beasts of the Book of Revelation. The often bizarre imagery presented to the reader of the book, this last book of the Bible, can be confusing. This imagery can even discourage people from reading the whole book. It's just too much to really take it seriously, they think. But the truth of the real meanings of the beasts will be a bit of a letdown for some of you. No Hollywood-worthy special effects, just logic and history. But don't give up. This explanation will still amaze you, so please watch. I've divided up this presentation into 8 sections. The first section, I'll review some important information if you're using a King James version of the Bible. There are some differences concerning the beasts between some versions of the Bible. Second section, we will define what a beast is. Third, we'll cover the number of beasts in the book of Revelation. Fourth, I'll give a condensed summary for each of the 3 bad beasts of Revelation. Fifth, I'll give a chronology of the appearances of these 3 beasts. Sixth section, I'll cover the 7 heads and 10 horns of the first and second beasts. The 7th section, the intersection of Bible time prophecies of the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days, or end times, and the 3rd beast is explained. The 8th section is just giving you some more resources to find more information for things you may find of interest in this video. In section 1, we start with a few points of information about the King James Version of the Bible. In that context, we will also talk about the English language to give you some possibly surprising information. A few notes here first about the English language. The English language did not develop until about the year 450 AD, which we generally now refer to as CE for Common Era. Thus, English did not exist when Jesus Christ walked the earth and for some 400 years thereafter. There are 3 developmental stages to the English language. First, Old English. If we hear someone speaking Old English, we would be unlikely to understand much of it. That's how different it is from the English spoken today. Old English was commonly spoken from about 450 through 1100 Common Era. The second developmental stage was Middle English, also known as Elizabethan English. Shakespeare's works use Middle English. To our modern English speakers, it can still be very challenging to fully understand it. It was in common usage from about the 1200s through the 1600s. Third, that's Modern English. It began in the 1700s on up to our time. The King James Version of the Bible was written in Middle English, which is why some of us have some challenges understanding the language of the King James Bible. Just in case you did not know, the New Testament was originally written in Greek, the language typically spoken and used in written texts in the time of Jesus Christ, even though Aramaic and Hebrew were also spoken by the Jews at that time in that area of the world. Greek was kind of the language of literature. As far as translations of the Greek texts into the English language, the King James Version was one of the earliest English translations, but not the first. The King James Version was first published in 1611 Common Era, over 400 years ago, and there have been many other versions that have updated their editions with more recent understandings of ancient Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. It should be noted that the updating of the language of the Bible in later editions or versions as it relates to the book of Revelation only really affects it in two ways that are pertinent here as we talk about beasts. First, the clarification of the beasts of Revelation. This will be explained shortly. And by changes to some of the prophecies in other books of the New Testament, specifically references to the past, to the end of the world, now more accurately state end of the age. This original error translated the Greek word aeonos as meaning world, when it should have been translated as age, as in the end of the age. That one correction changes the perceived threat level in the prophecies about what will happen when the Christ Spirit returns. So when the Christ Spirit returns, the world will not end. Rather, just that age will end, inferring, of course, that a new age will then begin. In section 2, we address the question, what exactly is a beast in Bible prophecy terminology? The answer, a beast is an earthly, meaning human, king and or his kingdom or empire. Whether a verse is speaking of a king or his kingdom depends on the context in which the term beast is used. You may wonder the source of this definition. The prophecy terminology in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation are very, very closely aligned. Also, the time prophecy math is the same to further highlight this similarity. The source of this meaning of beast is from the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 17, shown here, quote, "These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth," end quote. Arise out of the earth shows that they are human kings, not spiritual or divine kings like Moses or Jesus. Now for section 3, wherein we will clarify how many beasts there are, the use of the actual word beast in the book. Revelation is confusing enough without trying to figure out what all this beast stuff is about. The number of beasts can vary by which version of the Bible you are reading. The numbers you see here are the number of separate and distinct beasts in the 4 versions of the Bible shown in the column headings A, B, C, and D. The King James Version of the Bible is in column A. As you can see, there are 7 separate beasts by terminology in the King James Version. But you see in columns B, C, and D for the New King James Version, the New American Standard Bible, and the New International Version that show that all those versions only mention 3 separate beasts. Note that the King James Version was published in the year 1611. Since that time, there has been older Greek texts of Revelation discovered and updated scholarship that clarified the understandings of the meanings. And scholars have, through close reading of the texts, come to understand that some of these beasts were good beasts and some were bad beasts. For example, in the King James Version in chapter 4, it speaks of 4 beasts circling around the throne of God. These 4 beasts are depicted as praising God and the Lamb and he who sits on the throne. Obviously 4 good beasts. But later in Revelation, starting in chapter 9, Revelation's story centers on 3 other beasts that are very, very nasty critters, working against the Lamb, he who sits on the throne, and their purposes. These 3 bad beasts of Revelation are what the other versions of the Bible are counting as beasts, not the 4 good beasts mentioned before chapter 9. To illustrate this division in the definition of the beasts, I've provided this graphic. Hopefully, this will further clarify how the 7 beasts in the King James Version became the final 3 bad beasts in most of the modern editions of the Bible. These 3 bad beasts are what we will be covering in this video. On the far left, we start with the 7 beasts mentioned in the Old King James Version, and split those 7 into the 3 bad beasts and the 4 good beasts seen in the throne room. The later versions of the Bible changed the terminology of the references to the 4 good beasts by calling them living creatures instead of beasts. They are living because they have recognized the sovereignty of God, unlike the 3 bad beasts that work against God's will. The remaining beasts are then simply referred to as beasts in the text. The 4 verses in Revelation that mention these 4 good beasts are the ones you see listed here at the bottom right. This primer is about the 3 bad beasts since they have caused so much damage to God's message and messengers in the past and on into the present. How much longer into the future their ill effects are felt is yet unknown. If we count the number of mentions of the words beast or beasts and living creatures for those same versions of the Bible, we can see that the King James Version makes no differentiation between good and bad beasts in their translation's terminology. I thought it necessary to clarify why this primer on the beasts of Revelation only covers the 3 bad beasts. To make this perfectly clear, I hope, 3 beasts are bad, evil kings, the 3 bad beasts of the book of Revelation, meaning that they're spiritually deprived and depraved, spiritually diseased. They are outright enemies of God and His manifestations or prophets and work against them and their divine purposes. These beasts are primarily in chapters 9 through 20 of the book of Revelation. Here's our table of contents again. I've checked off the topics that we have already discussed just to let you know where we are in this video. So on to section 4, which provides summaries of information for each of the 3 bad beasts, which is the gist of this primer on the beasts. The beasts mentioned in the book of Revelation have been the source of fright, confusion, suspicion even. We need to clarify a lot about these beasts in this supremely interesting group of interrelated prophecies called the book of Revelation. So next is what I call a primer on those beasts. For our review of the 3 bad beasts, I will summarize the information for each of them in a table like this. The beast being described is listed at the top, beast 1, 2, or 3. Column 1 on the left will list the verses in the Bible where this beast is mentioned. Column 2 then will provide for each of the verses listed in column 1 the description of that beast from those verses. Column 3 will reveal the actual identity of that beast as has occurred in the material world. Yes, this means that all 3 of these beasts have already appeared in this world and are still here having their bad effects in our world. Now column 4 lists who this beast opposed, the original people they opposed, the identity of the holy people that this beast fought against, literally and figuratively and spiritually, and are still opposing, by the way. The first beast to appear in Revelation we will call beast number 1. In column 1, 3 verses are given wherein this beast number 1 is mentioned with the description. At the top, chapter 9, verse 11 describes in column 2 a king who was the angel of the bottomless pit. This king was beast number 1. In column 2, paragraph B, as the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit, obviously referring to the verse above it under the A, is called, again, referred to as coming from the bottomless pit. So obviously they are the same. So that's where we say the king in A, in column 2, is the beast mentioned in the next verse there, chapter 11, verse 7. Now back to column 1, paragraph C, chapter 12, verse 3. It is described as a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. In section 6, I'll tell you more about the 7 heads and the 10 horns. As to the identities of this beast in column 3, a man named Abu Sufyan, the emir of Mecca at the time of Muhammad, when Muhammad arose as a prophet of God. This emir Sufyan was the beast at the start. Then his son Muawiyah carried on in his father's footsteps. After them, their descendants carried on their treachery through their clan, the Umayyad dynasty of Sunni Islamic rulers. This person, Muawiyah, is important to remember because he was basically the Antichrist of the Muhammadan dispensation. More about these people will be provided shortly. Now, if we look at column 4, beast number 1 opposed at first Muhammad and Ali. Ali was kind of a Joshua figure to Muhammad, as Joshua was to Moses. The Umayyads continued their persecution of the descendants of Muhammad, through his daughter Fatima and Ali. Just a point to ponder here, the seat of the Umayyad dynasty of Sunni Islamic caliphs was in Syria, which is included in the area of Palestine. And remember, this beast, number 1, is the great red dragon. Beast number 2 is summarized here. Verse 1 of chapter 13 states, as shown at the top of column 1, or I should say at column 2, that he, John, quote, saw a beast coming out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. End quote. See the note there in the yellow box in the center part of this column. The term sea, as far as its geographical location according to the book of Isaiah, chapter 21, verses 1 and 9, tells us that this beast number 2 would arise out of the area of ancient Babylon. Next, down in column 1, the chapter 13, verse 2. If we look then in column 2, this verse states this about beast number 2. Quote, it worshipped the dragon, that's beast number 1, which gave power unto the beast. End quote. It's interesting to note that the Abbasids, a powerful clan in the Islamic world, murdered the Umayyads, that's beast number 1, in the year 750 Common Era, and took over their empire. Thus, they truly took the power of the beast. Thus, they became the next beast. The Abbasid rulers were headquartered in the area of Baghdad, very close to the ancient city of Babylon. Thus they, beast 2, arose out of the sea, per the quote in paragraph A, in column 2, quoted from the book of Isaiah. Now back to column 1 at the bottom, chapter 13, verse 7. The verse states, it was given unto him, that's beast number 2, to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Note in column 3 that this beast, the Abbasids, continued to oppose Muhammad and Ali and their true faith, the true Islam, by that beast opposing and often killing their descendants, most especially the imams of the Shia sect of Islam, who were descendants of Muhammad. This pattern of destruction was truly a war against the saints, mentioned in verse 7 of chapter 13. Note that when the Abbasids took power from the Umayyad clan, which was at that time the seat of the Sunni Islamic Empire, the seat was changed from Damascus, Syria, to Babylon, Baghdad, meaning it was moved to the wilderness of the sea. So beast number 2 came out of the sea per Isaiah's description that was mentioned above. Now we get to the third beast. This is the one we are really interested in, since this is the beast or kings who would be the enemies of the Lamb and the one who sits on the throne of the book of Revelation when they appeared. And this is the beast 666. That's where the mark of the beast is mentioned. That occurred during the time of this third beast. Now the third beast is different from the previous two beasts. Chapter 13 verse 11 tells us that unlike the previous two beasts, this third beast instead would arise from the earth, not from the sea, but from the earth, meaning in Bible prophecy terms would come from Persia, now known as Iran. There is one similarity to the first beast, per verse 11, and that is that the third beast spoke like a dragon, meaning like the previous beast, especially beast number 1, meaning that they spoke viciously in word and action. The third beast has only one head, but with 2 horns. This means it would have one dominion, Persia, with 2 kings, the 2 horns, who would be this beast, along with their kingdom. This beast is also associated with the name or title of 666, found famously in chapter 13 verse 18 at the bottom left there. Once we get to the third beast in chapter 13 verse 11, we begin to leave the territory of the first woe mentioned in the book of Revelation. The first woe was Muhammad, by the way. And we begin to dive into the coming of the Lamb, the second woe, and the one who sits on the throne, the third woe mentioned in Revelation. This third beast, which were 2 Shahs of Persia, Shahs are kings, was the enemy of both the Lamb, the forerunner of the Messiah, and the Messiah himself, he who sits on the throne. Meaning, of course, the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. The Bab was the Lamb, Bahá'u'lláh, he who sits on the throne, from the book of Revelation. Now for section 5, which is about the chronology of these beasts. You will learn exactly when and where these 3 nasty critters arose. Note that these 3 beasts appear sequentially, meaning not at the same time, in the chronology of the book of Revelation. And yes, counter to a lot of people's beliefs, there is a logical chronology in the book of Revelation. It's just that it is given in a series of repeated chronologies. To understand this chronology, please see my video titled Book of Revelation, Chronology and Structure. It's on YouTube in my channel, given in the bottom right corner of this slide. That channel name is Integral Destiny 9, as you see there. This is a timeline showing when the 3 beasts appeared. All dates are given in the Common Era years in the Gregorian calendar. This information is a bit repetitive of what was briefly mentioned before, but it will help clarify this history and help you remember it. Beast number 1 made its appearance when Muhammad was first beginning to teach revelations he was receiving through the angel Gabriel. The first person who began to fight against Muhammad was the emir or king of Mecca named Abu Sufyan. Then after him, his son named Muawiyah continued that resistance to Muhammad and his teachings thereafter. Muawiyah and his father lost that fight and pretended to convert to Islam. Muawiyah became the 5th caliph after Muhammad's death through his machinations, violence, and murder. He set in place people of his clan, the Umayyad clan, to set up the Umayyad dynasty of Sunni caliphs that lasted from the year 661 to 750 Common Era, a period of 150 years. It is important to note that beast number 1 is that red dragon mentioned before from Revelation chapter 12, verse 3. Beast number 2 was the Abbasid clan of Sunni Islamic Empire caliphs, which took power from the Umayyads by murdering them in the year 750. Thus, they literally took power from the first beast. The Abbasid caliphs and their minions set about murdering the male offspring of Muhammad, a murderous practice that the Umayyads had begun. The Abbasids continued with the malignant materialism and corruption of the leadership of Islam that started by the Umayyad caliphs and their followers and operatives. The Abbasid dynasty of Sunni caliphs ended when the Mongols invaded Baghdad, their headquarters, in the year 1258 Common Era. The ending of the Abbasid caliphs was not the end of Islam, however. The leadership of Sunni Islam continued to suffer under other leadership equally absent of divine guidance. Shia Islam was the second largest sect of Islam, primarily found in Persia and what is now present-day Iraq. Now we go to the right side of the timeline, which picks up some 586 years later when, in the year 1844, the Bab declared his divine identity and mission in May of 1844. He, the Bab, was the fulfillment of Islamic prophecies of the Mahdi or Qayyim and was the forerunner to the soon-to-appear Messiah, the returned Christ Spirit, who would be Bahá'u'lláh, of course, which Baha'u'llah means in English, the glory of God, if you recall. Baha'u'lláh would make his announcement of his divine identity in the year 1863. At that time, the third beast arose when the Shah, or King of Persia, Muhammad Shah, was in power. He and his Grand Vizier, that's his Prime Minister, began to persecute the Bab and his followers, of which there were thousands. Some estimate into the hundreds of thousands at one point. His son, Nasir-Din Shah, continued this violent practice, only worse in effects, after the death of Muhammad Shah in 1848. Nasir-Din Shah, whose photo is in the upper right corner, became the embodiment of the beast and thus earned the name of 666 in chapter 13, verse 18 of Revelation. Nasir-Din Shah was highly corrupt, as was his government. The Muslim clergy of the time were also corrupt in that they pushed the Shah and his government to obliterate the Bab, Baha'u'lláh, and their followers. The source of their corruption? Malignant materialism. They knew they would lose their power and the comfort of their positions if they recognized the Bab and Baha'u'lláh as God's latest manifestations. Thus, they sought to put an end to them. The third beast continues its corrupt effects through the present leadership of Persia, now called Iran. It needs to be clarified and emphasized that the effects of the first beast, the red dragon, did not end with the end of the Umayyad dynasty's demise in the year 750 Common Era. The red dragon beast basically created the following two beasts. The three beasts together have perpetuated the corruption of the first beast. Their corruption was not solely forcing the people in those areas to obey, pay tribute, and keep them in power, actions associated with the mark of the beast. Their main corruption was denial of God's prophets or manifestations, and their deadly maneuvering against them, including killing them and their followers. The Antichrist spirit also infected them. The corrupting influence of this befouled leadership has not been restricted to areas of the world led by Islamic leaders, but is now spread throughout the world. Malignant materialism results whenever the reins of divine laws weaken and the Antichrist spirit makes inroads into the population. See my video about Antichrist. It's called, oddly enough, The Antichrist, Fact or Fantasy. I'll put a clickable link to it in the description of this video in YouTube. The effects of these three evil beasts that continues to this day was damage to the leadership of Islam, not necessarily affecting individual believers who try to be true to the Quran, the holy book of Islam. The text of the Quran has not been corrupted, although some misinterpretations of the meanings of the texts have prospered. This corruption of the leadership, being malignant materialism at its roots, then took precedence in the nations. Thus it sapped and diminished the spiritual strength and vitality of Islam. Do not blame individual Muslims. This is not at all saying that Islam itself is corrupt, but rather that the leadership was corrupted. Islam, the pure individual practice of the divine spirit of the faith, is not corrupted. To reiterate, it is the leadership that was affected by these three beasts, and those who followed their dictates and became followers of the beast rather than followers of the Quran or Muhammad. Now we move into section 6, wherein the 7 heads and the 10 horns on both beasts number 1 and number 2 are explained. Heads are symbolic of the nations or dominions of the earthly king or empire. Horns symbolize the individual kings of a nation or dominion. So this means that the 7 heads are 7 dominions over which rule 10 earthly kings. Both beast number 1 and number 2 are described as having 7 heads and 10 horns. The third beast is different. The 7 heads for both beast 1 and beast 2 were the dominions that came under the Sunni Islamic Empire rulership. Here's the list of those 7 dominions of the 7 heads of the beast, both beasts actually, the red dragon as well as the beast number 2 that was symbolic of the Abbasid dynasty of Islamic kings, caliphs. Syria, Persia, Egypt, Africa, Arabia, Andalusia, and Transoxania. This map shows those 7 dominions of the Islamic Empire under beasts number 1 and 2. These 7 dominions are shaded in various colors. The light gray areas were not part of the dominions under the first 2 bad beasts during these times. The red bordered legend in the bottom left corner shows a number for each of those 7 dominions and then identifies what the names of those dominions were. Note that the white borders on the map are modern-day national boundaries, not in existence at the time of this Islamic empire, and this empire has changed its configurations throughout the centuries after the first caliph, after the death of Muhammad in the year 632 Common Era. Muhammad utilized military action mostly to defend his religious community from attacks by enemy tribes and other forces, not for spreading Islam. It was after his death that using force to spread Islam became common. After Muawiyah became the fifth caliph in the year 661 Common Era, and the subversion of the divinely ordained leadership of Islam occurred, that military conquest method of spreading Islam became common. The 10 horns of the red dragon, that is symbolic of that first beast, the red dragon, of course, represents the Umayyad dynasty of Islamic caliphs. These are the 10 names that are those 10 horns, names of the leaders. There were more than 10 leaders, but these are their 10 names. Like, for instance, if you look in number 2, Muawiyah, there was a Muawiyah the first and a Muawiyah the second. Yazid, the next one, there were 3. Yazid the first, the second, and the third. But when you look at just their names, there were 10 of them for that dynasty. These same 7 dominions apply to the second beast, since these 7 dominions were inherited from the first beast. The second beast also has 10 heads, just like the first. Here you see the 10 names of the Abbasid dynasty kings or caliphs. The 10 unrepeated names, that is. There were more than 10 Abbasid dynasty caliphs, however. After the 10th one listed here, al-Mutawakkil, after he was killed, the empire fell apart, and the true power of the empire fell into the hands of others. One caliph after another was killed. The position of the caliph was no longer respected as the prime mover in the empire. As one historian put it, quote, "The empire steadily declined while independent kingdoms and emirates and principalities within it multiplied." End quote. Then in the year 1258, the Mongols invaded and took over Baghdad and the territories surrounding it, thus putting an absolute end to the Abbasid dynasty of caliphs. I think you can see a preponderance of evidence that these 2 beasts really do apply to these 2 dynasties of Islamic rulers, and it also lends credence to the idea that chapter 11's story about what happened to the 2 witnesses truly was about Muhammad and Ali. See my video Revelation Revealed for an explanation of the 2 witnesses. I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video in YouTube. To emphasize, the third beast has 1 head with 2 horns in the prophecy, which means it is a single kingdom with 2 kings. Kings are known as shahs in Persia. Since a horn symbolizes a king or ruler, this third beast having 2 horns means 2 kings will play an important part in the fulfillment of this prophecy, which is exactly what happened. What is the significance of the appearance of beast number 3? It signals where and when the Messiah of the latter days, the returned Christ Spirit, will appear. And where is that, if you did not catch the mention on the previous slide? Persia, now known as Iran. Here's that table of contents again. And our status report is that we're down to section 7, which is next. Then after that is section 8, which provides some additional resources to get more information about what you've learned and what you'd like to learn. Section 7. In this section, I will tell you how the Bible gives the year that the Messiah of the latter days would begin his reign on earth. That's the returned Christ, by the way, as well as the Jewish Messiah of the latter days. If we know the year, then we can verify whether the 2 shahs of Persia can be the foretold third beast, and be further proof that the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh truly are who they claim to be, because of the timelines with them and the beast coincide. The Bible does give us the year of the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days, also known as the time of the end. And that year was 1844 Common Era. That was the year that the Messiah's dispensation began by the arrival of his forerunner, the Bab. It was also when the third bad beast of the book of Revelation began his nefarious actions. This graph shows the meanings of both the 70 weeks prophecy of the first coming of the Messiah, Jesus, from the book of Daniel, chapter 9, and the meaning of the 2300 days prophecy of the second coming of the Messiah from chapter 8 of Daniel. This diagram is very similar to the original one developed by the Seventh-day Adventists, showing the timeline for that 2300-year period from Daniel chapter 8 verse 14 that prophesies the 2300-day period until the Messiah comes. It starts at the far left at 457 BC, when Artaxerxes signed a decree to rebuild Jerusalem in that year, which is the starting point for the count of both of these prophecies. Note that in Bible time prophecies, a day in prophecy equals 1 year in our natural world. Thus, a week of 7 days in a prophecy means it is foretelling a period of 7 years to us humans. The high, long arch is the 2300-year prophecy period of time from chapter 8. The 70 weeks prophecy is shown at the far left. That's the little goal posts of that 70-week period, the 490-year timeline. This is fully explained in the video titled Christ Has Returned on my YouTube channel. So both prophecies of the first and second advents of the Messiah start at exactly the same beginning point, 457 BC. That's the lower left corner of the diagram there. And the 2300-year period ends in the year 1844 Common Era. Note also that the year 1844 is the same year as the Islamic calendar year of 1260. 1260 days equals 42 months, which equals 3.5 years, and also time, times, and half a time, a term for this same period of time found in the book of Daniel as well as in Revelation. Note in this graphic that the year 1844 Common Era is on the far right of this timeline and is the culmination of several time prophecies in the Bible foretelling when the Messiah would appear. The green timeline on the bottom of the slide starts in the year 602 BC, with the start of the prophecy in Daniel chapter 4, verses 25 and 32 about the length of King Nebuchadnezzar's punishment for being ungrateful to God. Note that the prophecy's hidden meaning is that this 7 times of punishment applies to humanity as a whole, not just punishment of this long-dead King Nebuchadnezzar. That prophecy ends in the year 1844, so that's the period of punishment ended in 1844. Next down is the horizontal white arrow, the one called the 2300 days prophecy from the book of Daniel chapter 8 verse 14. The beginning of the prophecy timeline was in the year 457 BC. It's the same one we talked about in the previous slide. It, too, culminated in that same year, 1844, Common Era, meaning that the year 1844 would be when the Messiah of the latter days would appear. Now, the wide, short pink arrow shows the prophecy that is given in several Bible books and verses as 1260 days, a time, times, and half a time, or as 42 months. They all mean the same period of time, which was 1260 lunar years, starting in 622 Common Era, when Muhammad officially began his religion, because that's when the Islamic calendar started. And that period of time ended, wouldn't you know, in the year 1844 Common Era, the very year that the Bab made his proclamation as being a manifestation of God, and that he was the forerunner of one even greater than he, who he called him whom God shall make manifest, meaning Bahá'u'lláh. 1844 was also the very beginnings of Jews returning to their land of Israel with an awakening goal of forming their own nation once again, as they were promised in Jewish scriptures. In that year, 1844, the Ottoman government restrictions of non-Muslims ended by edict of the courts, and all non-Muslims began to have equality before the law and freedom to worship their own faiths, including Judaism. Thus, the Jews were no longer denied returning to the Holy Land, and they began to do so. Thus, now that we know the year 1844, we need to find out who were the Shahs, the kings, the beasts of Persia at that time. Will these Shahs or kings take actions against anyone who claimed to be a manifestation of God? If they did, then I think we've identified the beasts. The two kings who were the horns of the beast of Persia, that's the beast number 3, and were called beasts themselves, are shown on this timeline at the very top. On the left, Muhammad Shah Qajar. The arrow there is showing the length period of time that he reigned. By the way, Qajar is the dynasty name of these two Shahs. He reigned from 1834 until his death in 1848. Next on the right is Nasiruddin Shah Qajar, who reigned from 1848 until he was assassinated in 1896. The timeline shows the reigns of these two kings, that they overlapped the earthly divine reigns of the Lamb of the book of Revelation, the Elijah figure to the Messiah, and that's on the left, bottom left, and the one who sits on the throne, the Messiah, who were the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh, respectively. This is the Shrine of the Bab, a golden dome structure on the side of Mount Carmel in Haifa, and it's the final resting place of the Bab. This is the Shrine of Bahá'u'lláh, the final resting place of the Messiah for the new era, the return to Christ's Spirit. The shrine is located just outside of Akka, Israel. Just beyond the Shrine of the Bab in the foreground are the buildings of the World Center that house the administrative functions of the worldwide Baha'i faith community. There are about 10 million Baha'is, followers of Baha'u'lláh, in the world, with about 170,000 of them in the United States. The last few slides of this video give information resources to find out more about the Bab, Baha'u'lláh, and their faith, the Baha'i faith. Just a couple more tidbits of information about the new Elijah and Messiah. The Bab, which means the gate in English, was the forerunner or Elijah figure for this new era that started in 1844 Common Era. Baha'u'lláh, which means the glory of God, is the Messiah of the latter days. The Bab made his declaration of his divine identity in 1844. He was born in Persia in 1819 and was martyred in 1850 for teaching his new religion. Bahá'u'lláh made his proclamation in 1863. He was born in Tehran, Persia in 1817 and passed away in the Holy Land in 1892. The new faith that the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh established is the Baha'i faith. If you'd like to find a book that gives a good, interesting overview of the Baha'i faith, its main figures, history, beliefs, and its followers, without being preachy or trying to convert you, this is the book for you, titled Bahá'u'lláh and the New Era by J.E. Esslemont. It's available through Amazon.com and other online book vendors. It may even be in your local library. And note, the full text is now available for free at the website at the bottom of the slide. Sorry it's such a long address. You can get a PDF version through this website or simply read it online. I'll also put this website address in the video description. This is a great little documentary. It's about an hour long. Its title is The Gate Dawn of the Baha'i Faith. It's a story of the forerunner to the Messiah. It's a story of the Bab, and it's professionally produced, and you can watch it for free on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and put into the search box the channel name, The Gate that you see in the bottom right, The Gate Film, all one word, The Gate Film, all one word. And in looking around there, you'll see that it's in quite a few different languages, so make sure you choose the right language. Again, it's about an hour long. It's for free. Here are some official Baha'i websites. Top one there is www.bahai.org. That's the international official website for those seeking information about the Baha'i faith, and it has a link to the online library of sacred and authoritative texts that are available, accessible for free. Next is www.bahai.us. That's the USA official website for seekers who want information about the Baha'i community in the United States. Then we have bahai.org/library, and that is access, again, free to the sacred and authoritative texts and other publications by worldwide Baha'i community. Then at the bottom, the USA bookstore. That's BahaiBookstore.com. It's the official online bookstore for the USA. You can purchase books, videos, music, and some other items through this site as well. You don't have to be a Baha'i to purchase things. The National Organization of the Baha'is of the United States has a presence on both Facebook and its own YouTube channel. Both of their pages in these websites goes by the name Baha'is of the United States. The website BahaiTeachings.org. This is a blog site where you can find numerous articles written about subjects touching on the Baha'i faith and its teachings. It's not an official site, but rather is produced by some individual Baha'is. Next is the access address to the YouTube channel of the Wilmette Institute, which is on an online Baha'i educational site that has webinars and actual online courses. Some are free, some are at a cost, on a wide spectrum of topics. The easiest way to get there is to go to youtube.com, then in the search box put their channel name, Wilmette Institute. And next down there is we have a Baha'i World News Service, which can be reached through that news.baha'i.org site. To read some examples of some Baha'i prayers, go to bahaiprayers.org. Then at the bottom there, there are some wonderful videos by John S. Hatcher on numerous topics about the Baha'i Faith. There's over 100 videos. He is a wonderful author who's written many books. And these videos are, as I mentioned, on a number of topics, which includes a few on Bible prophecy fulfillment. Just enter his name, John S. Hatcher, as you see it there, into the YouTube page search box. On the right are listed several, but not all, of the books that Bahá'u'lláh has written. You may be able to find them for free at the website address at the bottom, baha'i.org/library. You may find some in your public library, or if you wish to purchase them, some are available through online booksellers. Here's a list of many of my other videos, all on YouTube, mostly on prophecy fulfillment by the main 4 founding figures of the Baha'i Faith. You can read the titles. There's a variety of topics. Pause the video to review them to see if any might interest you. Instructions on how to access them, all for free, on YouTube is on the next slide. Here is how to find my videos on Bible prophecy fulfillment. In the youtube.com site, enter my channel name shown here, Integral Destiny 9, all one word, no spaces in between. A direct URL to get to my channel is shown here. That's the youtube.com/c/Integral Destiny 9. Note that some clickable links to some of my videos are in the description for this video on YouTube. Please note that this video is an amateur production by this singular person, me, and it's very obvious it's an amateur production. It's not an official production by the Baha'i Faith community. Copyright protections are claimed. Please do not make changes, additions, or deletions to this presentation. Have questions? Contact me at the email address you see there. And thank you for watching.